Good evening to you all. Welcome to ETV News. I'm Grum Tariku. Prime Minister has resigned following months of political turmoil in the country. Abdullah Hamdok said it was not possible for him to restore order under a power-sharing agreement with the military. After the army staged a coup last year, Abdullah Hamdok was reinstated to head up transition back to civilian government. Habitam Washagri has more on that.
Prime Minister of the Sudan has resigned following months of political turmoil. Abdullah Hamdok said it was not possible for him to restore order under a power-sharing agreement with the military. Dozens have died in the unrest since Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok signed a power-sharing deal with the military following a coup in October. But he now admits that hasn't worked out and new thinking is needed.
I decided to give back the responsibility and announce my resignation as Prime Minister to give a chance to another man or woman of this noble country to continue leading our dear nation and help it pass through what's left of the transitional period to a civilian democratic country.
The former Prime Minister stressed the need for his resignation to avoid bloodshed conflict in Sudan.
Despite my efforts to achieve the necessary consensus to be able to deliver to our people the promise of peace, justice and no bloodshed, that did not happen. During the past few days, I met with all the civilian and military officials of the Transitional Council to explain and put the patriotic and historic responsibility in front of them. Following what I stated, I have decided to return to you what you entrusted me with, and I announce my resignation from the post of Prime Minister.
Military and civilian leaders have been sharing powers since the autocrat Omar al-Bashir was ousted in 2019 after 30 years in charge. Elections are currently planned for July. But with Hamdok gone and Sudan roiled by unrest, the road to democracy looks increasingly fragile. Khalid Kahir, who is inside Strategy Partners, asked why Hamdok decided to step down now.
Well, anyone who comes in now as a prime minister would be drinking from the same poison chalice. Any new PM would be seen as an accomplice to the coup, much in the way that Hamdok belatedly came to be seen. But also, like Hamdok, they would also have very little executive space within to function. They wouldn't be able to choose their own cabinet. They wouldn't be able to make their appointments. They wouldn't be able to undo appointments made by the coup regime. And so it's unlikely that anyone will want to step forward, and anyone who genuinely wants democratic transformation will want to step forward now into Hamdok's shoes. What makes far more sense is to restart the sort of transition and find a new political agreement, a new political basis, and a new constitutional basis that actually pays attention to what the resistance committees, the people on the streets, the pro-democracy forces have been saying, and not just sort of find ways to divide up political places for political parties, which is very much what we saw in 2019. This time round, there has to be an agreement that more people can buy into, and it will genuinely be process-driven rather than just oriented around, political structures, where will be lots of fighting over who gets what position.
Khalid Kahir from Inside Strategy Partners in Khartoum, thank you very much for your insight.
Kahir remarked the next political climate in Sudan. Political experts and politicians said it is difficult to predict what will happen in Sudan, and the political climate of the country needs serious attention.
are watching ETV News. It's said that African news needs to be conscious on the issues of Africa and pay sacrifices to the African unity. South African community activist and president of Soweto Parliament, Nana Lax, has arrived in Addis Ababa to beef up the #NoMoreInternational movement and to show his solidarity for Ethiopia. Lax also underlined that protecting Ethiopia from external pressure is creating an opportunity to ensure Africa's independence. Jerusalem Betsa has more on that.
Lax is South African community activist and president of the Soweto Parliament. Lax is also engaging with other Africans on the No More rallies held by Ethiopians and Africans in South Africa. Now Lax has arrived in Addis Ababa to show his solidarity for Ethiopians and witnessing the reality of the country for the global community. In a press briefing, Lax briefed journalists on the objectives of his visit to Ethiopia, and he said, as a young African, Africans should focus on their potential to solve Africa's problem by their own.
This is our continent. This is the continent of our ancestors. We have nowhere else to go as Africans. Other people can go when the going is tough. When things get bad, they can say, no, I'm going to Europe, I'm going back, I'm going to America. We have nowhere to go. This is our continent. So we must fight with everything we have, even if it means we must join the ancestors on the other side of the spiritual world. You must die for the continent. And we are ready to die for the continent. That's a small thing. We don't mind. So we're saying that we're not going to be entertaining politics. We're going to be entertaining the truth. And the truth is that African problems must be solved by Africans, meaning African solutions for African problems.
Lax also called on African youth to be conscious on the issues of Africa and to sacrifice for African unity.
This is our time. This is the new Africa. Our parents, our grandparents, except for here in Ethiopia, were colonized. We need to change how things operate in Africa. We need to show that we can unite one way or another in Africa. We are not going to tolerate the idea of young people running away from their countries because their countries have problems. We have to, as young people, make sure that we fight for our countries. We don't only talk, but we fight for our countries. But young people in the African continent are too soft, and we are here to wake them up. They are sleeping too much. They must all wake up. And if you think that you don't have the courage, we'll show you that you have the courage. If people can move from the south of Africa into Ethiopia to come and help you fight a good fight, why can't you fight for your own country?
Lax recalled Ethiopia's support for South Africans during the anti-apartheid movement and underscored that the nation is a beacon of freedom of all black people. Therefore, all the black people should support its struggle against foreign pressures.
Ethiopia is the only country not colonized in the African continent. That means the wealth of our African knowledge, the pure wealth of our African knowledge, lies in Ethiopia. So saving Ethiopia, making sure that Ethiopia does not fall into the hands of colonization, is saving the African continent. Because if the last country gets colonized, we have lost everything. Our history is gone. We now have to search deeper. So now we've got it. It's in Ethiopia. So if you want the restoration of our cultures and the African ways of doing things, just come to Ethiopia. The time is a clear example. The rest of the continent uses the colonizers' time. And the young people don't know that across the continent. But Ethiopia still uses the correct African time, when the sun rises, the nature's time. So those are small things that we need to understand, why it's important for all of Africa to fight and help Ethiopia with a good fight.
For a continent of around 1.3 billion people needs a permanent voice and seat at the UN Security Council, Lax noted.
We move from physical colonization, physical apartheid in South Africa, to systematic apartheid. They put systems in place, and then we think that we've won when we haven't won. Look at us now in the United Nations, in the Security Council, in the AU Security Council. What's going on there? It's nonsense that's going on there. Young people are saying it in the continent. It's nonsense. It's not Abiy saying it. It's not Cyril Ramaphosa saying it. It's us, the young people of the continent, saying it. So if you don't get that reform, a revolution will come against those systems too.
Lax established the Soweto Parliament comprising people regardless of their religion, race and political views to promote justice and equality.
Young people will make sure that they unite with you and fight for this continent, because this is our motherland. We have no.
Photojournalist at Getty Images, Jamal Counter, says some Western reporters don't care to come to Ethiopia while covering issues about the country. In an exclusive interview with Addis Dialogue, he says this is part of their biased behavior, which is also indicative of their disdain to the country.
It's a joke. I grew up in the era of Vietnam. Like, one of my inspirations was Larry Burroughs, combat photographer, as well as other photographers who operated from Vietnam up to Desert Storm and beyond. And part of what journalists did was always go where the news was. You don't have the excuse. I mean, this telephone horse pocky is just ridiculous to me. And then people will sit there and say, oh, well, we can't have access because the government makes it hard. I've been here 5 times. 5 times. I wrote the information down. I filled out my applications. I went to Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Broadcast Bureau, and I went through the process of getting my paperwork done. I had a UN credential. I don't know if I'll still have it after this conflict, but I had a UN credential, and I had my regular press credentials for the US. If you are an accredited journalist and you follow the steps, you can get in to cover this conflict. I think that a lot of times the people who have come here to cover the conflict are, you know, basically swimming in white privilege. And they're swimming in an arrogance that I've seen in other parts of Africa, where people feel like, well, I'm from, you know, London, and I should be able to just walk in here because you guys are savages. You guys are like, you're Stone Age, you're primitive. So I should just be able to do what I need to do and leave. I don't have to like go by your rules. And that's the problem.
The journalist also says the huge diaspora homecoming has a great message for other African nations.
To now be focusing on being completely self-sufficient, new economic ventures, new relationships, new just a new outlook and management of self and resources to basically empower yourself. I think it's disgusting, actually. I harp a lot on, you know, my family and its military history and what have you. And I think it's a joke that, you know, I've had generations of people before me who went to serve the U.S., and the U.S. has now kind of sunk to this level and just kind of bore itself as this imperialist beast, you know? And it's embarrassing in the age of social media when the State Department can say, issue a travel advisory, and I have friends walking through in Toto Park or walking downtown, you know, eating kitfo if they're not fasting, or doing whatever, and just living life, you know? And then I'm getting pictures from elsewhere in the country that kind of demonstrate, you know, okay, the war is here, but then life is happening here in this way. And so the State Department and the West, they're getting caught in these really bad lies. You know?
The city of Lalibela, home of rock-hewn churches of Ethiopia, is welcoming guests from all over the country to celebrate Christmas. The youths of the city are welcoming the guests by organizing various events, including washing of the feet of the guests. Johannes van Town has more on this.
The historic city of Lalibela, home to Christmas festivities, has begun welcoming visitors from all over the country. Priest Malak Tafer, who came to Lalibela from West Gojam zone for the festival, expressed his happiness that the town was liberated from the terrorist group. The priest thanked the people for welcoming him despite the water and electricity shortage caused by the terrorist TPLF.
ቅዱስ ላሊበላ ለማክበር ያው መጥቻለሁ
I've come to celebrate Saint Lalibela. The city is in peace now. May it be the will of Christ that we participate in Beza Kulu and return to home. Even though the people suffered a lot in the war, they welcomed us warmly. When I came here 2 years ago, the city had a water supply, but now there is water scarcity.
The youth of Lalibela told ETV that they are ready to receive guests who are coming to the city for Christmas.
The users are working to clean up the city. In particular, with my coordination, we have made the city clean and comfortable for visitors, because now our guests are starting to come in. We are welcoming our guests by washing their feet and serving food and providing other hospitalities.
We are serving food to our guests. There's nothing different from last year. We are just welcoming our guests.
We are welcoming our guests. We are still preparing because guests are still coming in. Currently, the activity in the city is good and peaceful. We have prepared everything for the festival. We welcome our guests and we look forward to their arrival.
The city's youth who are working to coordinate the celebration of the festival are doing their part to ensure that visitors do not suffer as a result of the destruction of infrastructure. And also they said guests should feel comfortable because the city is peaceful.
Members of the Ethiopian diaspora community who recently arrived home have traveled to Samara, Afar, to visit war-affected areas in the region. The delegation is led by Deputy Director General of the Ethiopian Diaspora Agency. Next, the diaspora will visit people affected by terrorist TPLF in Afar and Amhara regions, as per the nation's call for a 1 million Ethiopian diaspora and Friends of Ethiopia. Many have started arriving home to celebrate Ethiopian Christmas amid Western nations' persistent propaganda campaign, alerting their citizens to leave the country and tarnishing the country's image as unsafe.